Who are going to be the most broken champions of 11-18? What's up, GameLeaper? The Jizz here. Oh, and by the end of today's video, you will know who the 20 best picks will be of the 11-18 Rift. So if you want to learn and start playing one of these champions so you can get that free LP in a week's time, great idea. Speaking of great ideas, there are timestamps again, but just remember, for each champion, you will get the runes, builds, and a cheeky tip on how to play these picks at a high level, so let's get into it. Now, starting off the countdown, coming in at number 20 is the first AD carry of the countdown, and this is Draven. And for Draven, next patch, your ultimate is going to be executing champions when you have more stacks than their current HP. Now, to be honest, this isn't going to really affect your gameplay that much, but Draven is still going to be very strong. With Halo Blades, this gives you a ridiculously strong early game and laning phase, and once you finish all core items, in particular Shield, Bow, and the Collector, you will be doing so much damage. And just a quick tip, remember that when you play Draven and you use your E, you want to be throwing this axe to the side of the champion you're trying to dislodge. So if you want them to bounce to the right, throw it to the left of them. If you want them to go to the left, throw it to the right of them. Throwing it in a straight line at the enemy champion is sometimes good, and that's all you need, but trying to direct them a certain way can actually secure you and your support kills in the bot lane. Now, beating Draven to the number 19 spot, we have a mid laner, not a top laner, and this is Set. Set in the mid lane, guys, I'm telling you, is broken. Nowhere near enough people play him, and he's so good because he counters pretty much every melee champion you're going to see there, and against ranged champions, it's impossible to push him out of lane, and because you're strong early game, you should always be getting to the mid game for free, and your early pressure gives your jungler the priority they need to do something on the map, and it's super easy for you as well to set up kills for your jungler. Now, just a quick tip for Set, harmonizing your abilities is the crucial thing. Way too many Set players might use their W on its own, might use their E, and that's it. Once you get to level 3 and then level 6 in particular, you want to be using your abilities in coordination with one another. So if you have 3 cooldowns, you're using all of those cooldowns with one another. Now, just ahead of Set, coming in at number 18 is the first support of the countdown, and this is Rel. And ever since Riot reverted your W's cooldown in 11-15, Rel has been one of the best performing supports. The engage you have, the peel you have, it is insane. And next patch, because nothing is changing, this is a good thing. Now, just a quick tip before you play Rel and run it down, you have to understand that when you're going into team fights, you don't just have to use your E on your AD carry. You can sometimes use this on your jungler if they're ganking you. You can use this on your top laner who's going in to engage. You use it with the champions who are going to hard engage, and you will see better results. Now, beating Rel to the number 17 spot is Dr. Mundo, and in yesterday's tier list video, some people were like, how can you put Dr. Mundo in the busted tier? Well, it's quite simple. Your ultimate is no longer going to be affected by Grievous Wounds. Do you know how broken that is? Now, Mundo, even before that, was an S tier top laner, and now this pushes him over the edge. One of the big cucks to you is going to be nowhere near as much of a cuck. And I even called it in a recent video as well. I think this change is going to open up builds for Mundo, so Titanic Hydra might be a thing, Spirit Visage becomes less important, and the tip for Mundo, if you are going to pick him, is playing around your passive's cooldown. This is the passive where if you get hit by an enemy stun or a root, something that's going to immobilize you, you actually ignore that effect. Now, this is on a very high cooldown in the early game, 60 seconds at level 1, and even though this goes down to 15 seconds in the late game, if you can play around and time your trades based on your goes where he pleases, this is going to give you the most potential to actually win the laning phase and carry games. Now, beating Mundo to the number 16 spot, this is our second AD carry, and this is Senna. And ever since last patch where Riot increased your crit damage and also up the spawn rate on your miss race where you kill minions, this has been huge for Senna. It's made AD carry Senna a lot more viable, and because she was in a decent spot anyway, with Kraken Slayer, with Ginsu's Rage Blade, and then Rapid Fire Cannon, it's back to being really oppressive and easily the best way to play her at the moment if you want to carry. Now, just a quick tip, your W, okay, if it last hits a minion or kills an enemy, this is going to detonate instantly, so you will root anything around that killed target. This is really important in lane because what you can do is W to last hit a minion, and if enemy champions, the enemy AD carry, the enemy support is standing around that area, they will get rooted instantly. Now, you might rarely do this, but it's a great thing to have in your arsenal to use in the bot lane because you will catch so many people out. Now, ahead of Senna, we have our first jungler of the countdown, and this is Zac. If you want a consistent, reliable jungler to play, Zac is by far the best one to pick. Yes, you can get invaded early game, but your insane scaling and your team fighting potential, you are always going to be useful. But before you lock in Zac, it's very important to know that with your Q, stretching strikes, the second part of it is a basic attack, which means once you've connected your first strike to an enemy champion, you can auto attack anything you would normally auto attack to activate your second stretching strike, whether this be a ward, a blast cone, a honey fruit. You can auto attack anything, and this is going to displace that enemy champion and root them as well. Now, coming in at number 14 is another champion like Dr. Mundo who received a bit of stick for being in the busted tier list, and this is Corki, who is a busted mid laner. I don't care what anyone says, the dude has a 53% win rate in every single elo. This is including high elo and even low elo where he might struggle, and it's quite simple. The fleet footwork buff means that against enemy champions, champions, when you hit them, you're healing for more. This is better for your laning phase, which means you're going to get out of it, and that's what you're about, scaling into the late game. Your items as well are in a really good spot. Shield bow, mana mune, the damage you do is nuts, and with your package in late game team fights, where you are going to be so strong, you can rinse the enemy team. But just a tip for Corki before you actually do play him is to use your package aggressively. Way too many Corkis, especially in lower elots, will use his package, still keeping in mind that he's a ranged champion, and they'll play him like an AD carry. You almost want to play him like a hard engager because you get two Valkyries, right? Using your package initially and then using your Valkyrie after that to get out of a sticky situation. So don't be afraid to be really aggressive with your package. It will do an insane amount of damage in a team fight, and that is what you're about. Now, coming in at number 3, the second support of the countdown, this is Bard. And for Bard, with the new Anathema's chain item, just a really good support. Amazing at roaming, decent in lane, and this has seen Bard have one of the best win rates for all supports all season long. This is not going to change next patch. Now, just a tip for Bard, before you use your ultimate, way too many Bards get trigger happy. You want to be using your ultimate, guys, to catch enemy champions out. Lots of Bards, when they see their Malphite go in, they get a massive ultimate, and then they use their ultimate on top of that. What this does is it buys those enemy champions who are caught out time to react, and also their teammates as well. So don't use your ultimate when your teammates have got a sick engage off. Save it for the enemy champions who are trying to escape those team fights. The longer you hold on to it, the better it's going to be. Now, another mid laner is coming in at number 12 on the countdown, and this one as well got a few question marks in yesterday's video, and this is Ahri, who was in the busted tier list. Now, Ahri isn't going to do insane damage, right, like she did back in the day with Deathfire Grasp. No, you're playing her with Lucidity Boots and Everfrost. You're all about cooldown and also picking enemy champions off. That's what you're about now. You're more like a control mage rather than an AP assassin. But this is still a great way to play because in the game there's so much damage anyway, so setting up kills for your teammates is legit. In lane as well, you're so reliable, it's very hard to kill you. You have great setup, wave clear, sustain, all of this. But just one tip before you actually jump into a game and play Ahri. Once you do actually have Everfrost, don't be afraid to use your Everfrost root or the slow before you use your charm. Landing your charm at your mythic spike is pretty much going to guarantee a kill for you and your teammates, so it's actually about setting that up. So using your Everfrost active to immobilize that enemy champion gives you a much better chance of landing that E of yours, and it's just a much more consistent way of playing. Now, just ahead of Ahri, coming in at number 11, we have one of the best bot laners in the game. Notice how I said bot laners, not AD carries, and this is Swain. And I know it's pretty sad for AD carries because there are mages in your role who just do it better, but Swain is one of them. So if you do want free LP, just pick him. In lower elos, he's such a menace because range doesn't exist, and because in the early game AD carries are generally weak, as Swain and these other mages, you can scale for pretty much free. Your E as well gives you CC, so you can catch enemy AD carries out in the early laning phase. But just a quick tip before you do actually play Swain, try to use your W to force the enemy champion you're trying to target to move towards you so you can then land your E. So you W behind the enemy champion, they have to move closer to you. This is going to put them in range of your Nevermore, and if you can land it, it's GG. You are never going to lose that trade. Now, starting off the top 10, guys, we're going to the top lane here, and this is Fiora, who is still going to be busted in 11-18. There's no nerfs to Fiora or her items, so you can keep building Gore Drink or Ravenous Hydra, and you really are the grand duelist. But just a tip, lots of Fiora players, especially inexperienced ones, will use their parry only on the defensive side of things. Now, of course, that's important. You want to parry the big skill shot that's coming at you, but what the best Fiora players do when they are actually winning a trade is they will use it offensively. Remember, it's going to slow the enemy champion and their attack speed. You don't just have to use it to stun the enemy champion by blocking one of their abilities. So if you are fighting an enemy champion, if you are winning that trade super hard, using it to slow the enemy champion, their movement speed and their attack speed also guarantees a win in that trade. Now, I'm super excited about the champion coming in at number 9 because for Talia in the mid lane and even in the bot lane, you are getting some massive buffs. And we did detail these yesterday. But once again, because there's a lower cooldown on your worked ground and the area is smaller and you're getting more of the cooldown back if you use your Q on your worked ground, this is nuts for lane Talia. Now, I personally think that Talia in the jungle was underrated before next patch, but next patch in lane, because you have Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer Shoes, you're an amazing roamer from the mid lane as well, you can roam around the map. I just think it's going to be free LP. And the tip for you guys to go out and play Talia is to be aware of that cooldown refund that now exists. When you Q on your worked ground, don't be afraid to. This is great for last hitting and poking the enemy champion because that cooldown is going to get refunded by 50%. So there's a lot less stress on using your threaded volley on new terrain. Now, beating Talia to the number 8 spot, we're going to stay in the mid lane for this pick and the 7th pick on the countdown, and no surprises here, this is Aurelia. Despite the nerfs in 11-15, 11-17, Aurelia has still proven to be one of the premier mid laners and honestly one of the most obnoxious champions in the game. Like, I don't think there's anyone who enjoys playing against her. In the mid lane as well, she can really pop off because most champions you're going to play against are going to be squishy, and if you land one flawless duet on them, it's over. But just one tip, even though you don't really need one to play Aurelia, is to soften up the enemy minions so you can blade surge to them, because you always want to jump onto the enemy champion, right? But we always want to have our Q off cooldown. We always want that reset. So one thing you can do is soften up the enemy minions by auto attacking them beforehand, and then this is going to create the stepping stones you need to go in, auto attack, and get out quickly. Now, beating Aurelia to number 7, this is Katarina, another Conqueror based mid laner, and there's not much to really say about Kat. Her movement speed got nerfed this season, and that's been it. With Nash's Tooth, Riftmaker, Hextech, Rocker Belt, Sorcerer Shoes, whatever items you choose to go, you could go anything, to be honest. Tank, you're still going to pop off in 1v9. Now, her laning phase is kind of difficult, so that's the tip, to preserve your HP in the first few levels. Do not run out and look to trade. Remember as well that your Q, if you Q an enemy champion, this is going to draw minion aggro, so you only want to be using your Q, okay, to last hit minions. You want that wave coming into you, so just play safe, preserve that HP, and once you hit level 2 and level 3, etc., that's when you can look to trade. Now, the best support of 11-18 is coming in at number 6, guys, and this is Sona. Ever since Riot reworked her and you were getting those aficionado stacks, Sona has the best win rate out of every support and champion on the entire Rift. And the key to really playing Sona is to use your power chord as effectively as possible. And remember that each of your Q, W, and E, these are going to give your power chord a different effect. So if you want to deal more damage for an auto attack, you use your Q last. If you want to reduce the target size and damage output, you use your W last. Or if you want to slow the enemy champion, you use your E last. Very important to know. Now, starting off the top 5, we have the second best jungler of 11-18, and this is Press the Attack Trundle. This champion is nuts. I know that he's been nerfed for support, and it will affect your ganking potential, but when you're 1v1ing enemy champions as PTA Trundle in the early game, the slow on your pillar does not matter one bit. The attack speed and sustain you get from your W, the damage you do with your Q and its slow cooldown, like no one can trade with you, and that really is the tip for Trundle jungle. Get to level 3 by doing whatever clear you want to do, and then run into the enemy jungler's face, fight them to the death, and look to be really aggressive. That is when you're strong. Do not waste this advantage. This is Cassiopeia, and you might be thinking, mid Cassio, really? Now, mid Cassio, I think it's in a really good spot, but she's even better played in the bot lane. I know, I'm sorry to all those AD carries out there, but it's just the truth. Playing Cassiopeia in the bot lane is way more free than mid lane, because AD carries are going to deal a lot less damage than a Zed or a Talon or a LeBlanc, so what this allows you to do is to scale for free, and with a support next to you, you can do a lot of damage. That W of yours, the ground, allows you to capitalize on a Leona engage, on a Nautilus engage, whatever it is, and once you get your Leandries and Saracen Brave Spike, I mean, we all know how good Cassio scales, right? But the tip to play Cassiopeia at a high level, just because you have your Q off cooldown doesn't mean you have to use it. Sometimes saving it exerts so much pressure in the lane because the enemy champion is going to be thinking, if I move up here, I'm going to cop that Cassio Q damage. So don't think just because you have it off cooldown, and it is a really important ability, that you have to use it. Now, funnily enough, I did just mention the third best champion of 11-18, and this is the best mid laner on the Rift, and this is LeBlanc. And even though your wave clear really isn't the best, it's just the fact you deal so much damage throughout an entire game, and in the late game where you turn into an Earth because of the ability haste you have. But it's very important when you're playing LeBlanc to play around vision control. You want to be hidden. You do not want the enemy backline in particular to see you. So one tip, once the laning phase ends, is to buy a red sweeper. Pretty basic tip, I know, but this is going to help you out so much because your identity is as an AP assassin in the late game. So operating in Fog of War, this is the foundation to popping off and carrying later in games. Now, the best jungler is coming in at number 2, and this is Jarvan. And thanks to the buffs this season, so in 11-12, your W's cooldown reduced by 3 seconds, and 2 patches ago, your ultimate is dealing more damage based on your bonus AD, and because your auto attacks are going to be dealing more damage to targets with more HP, your damage output is just so high, and with Gore Drinker, because of the mythic passive, your cooldowns are just so low. You're also one of the best gankers in the game and really useful in teamfights because of your ultimate, but just one tip when you do gank. Don't feel pressured, a bit like the Cassio tip, to use your EQ for max range. Sometimes just walking into a lane without using your EQ exerts so much pressure that the enemy champion will actually die just from running themselves out of room. Now, the best champion for another patch, for like the 10th patch in a row, no surprises here, this is Riven. And I don't think I need to go into any detail here. Even if you are one of those edgy Riven mains who leaves games when you die once in lane, even you guys should be having a ball of it at the moment. But one tip for playing Riven is that your E speeds up the animation for the rest of your abilities. So if you E before doing anything else, this is going to speed that animation up. So if you EQ, if you EW, if you ER, this is going to expedite that animation process so you can catch your opponents off guard a lot sooner. So those are the best 20 champions of 11-18, guys. If you did enjoy the video, remember to leave a like down below, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our daily uploads, and before you leave, make sure to check out the GameLeap website for the best league content on the web. Thousands of your fellow summoners have signed up and are frothing the content, so to do the same, get signed up. Links in the description or comment section, and until tomorrow's video, this has been the